Is it 1938 or 2023?
There are drones buzzing overhead, attack helicopters in the sky, and explosions every few seconds. A war has erupted between Israel and Gaza.
Welcome to Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell, Radio for the Remnant. Today we are honored to have Amir Tsarfati join us to talk about the carnage in God's land, Israel. What does war in the Middle East mean for the rest of the free world? How does the scenario relate to the Bible and to Bible prophecy? And how can we pray? Here is today's programming.
It was a very quiet morning, Saturday, 6:30, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the happiest of all the days of the feast. Tonight, there were supposed to be celebrations across the country with dancing, holding the Torah books because of the end of the cycle of reading of the Torah and the beginning of another one. There were youngsters that had a party all night out in the nature. There were a lot of Israelis that were asleep. It's Shabbat. And there were a lot of soldiers that had no clue that in a few minutes their lives will either end or change forever. And then exactly at 6:30, with a barrage of hundreds of rockets, in a very daring move, Hamas terrorists attacked nearly 50 Israeli military outposts along the border. And once they neutralized them, they managed to breach the wall and the fence and open a wide road for their vehicles and their motorcycles. And they also used some gliders, and within 20 minutes, at least 1,000 terrorists infiltrated into Israel and totally surprised the people in that outdoor party, civilians that are sleeping in on Shabbat, and the soldiers that never saw that coming. And within a matter of 1 hour, we already counted more than 100 dead. As of now, it's over 200. But the astonishing thing, the one thing that we dreaded the most, is the fact that they were able to abduct nearly 100 Israelis into Gaza Strip. And they paraded them on the main road. Women and children and old people and young people and dead bodies of Israeli soldiers were all paraded along the main road. So Israel declared war, and we're about 10 hours into this war with over 5,000 rockets in less than 12 hours. Another disturbing thing is, which leads me to believe that there is a country behind it and not just a terrorist organization, is the fact that in a very strange way, the Iron Dome missed so many rockets. And there were direct hits in so many places. And Hamas basically declared, we neutralized the Iron Dome.
Glad you can join me for Understanding the Times Radio today. That was the familiar voice of Amir Tsarfati, my guest for the hour. That actually was last weekend at the awaiting his return in Philadelphia, and he's going to join me in just a moment as we review, well, at least we'll make an effort here to talk about the surprise invasion by Islamic jihadi group Hamas. It's so far resulted in nearly 1,000 Israeli deaths, American deaths, and others. Well over 2,000, probably between 2,000 and 3,000 wounded. unknown number of Israeli citizens kidnapped to the terror enclave of Gaza. And this includes the elderly, parents, children, even babies. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding. This is a terror attack of proportions heretofore unknown in Israel, and the casualties are more in line with a full-scale war. We'll discuss this for the hour. My guest writes this. He wrote this a couple days ago now, and you kind of heard him summarize, so I don't want to go over the exact same, but he writes, it was 6:30 on a beautiful Saturday, Sabbath in the morning, all over Israel. People were sleeping in on the final day of Sukkot, the joyous Feast of Tabernacles. In southern Israel, just 5 kilometers from the border with Gaza, an all-night party with more than 1,000 young people attending was just starting to wind down. And then I'll read just one more paragraph. This is an e-blast that he sent out in the last couple of days here. Drones were launched that dropped bombs on the Israeli military outposts along the border fence, immediately neutralizing the ground-level chain of command along Gaza. Thus, there was no one left to report to the higher levels of leadership what was taking place. At the same time, rockets began to fire from Gaza into Israel, first hundreds, then thousands. The firing of rockets was not unusual. What was atypical, as he just referenced in that clip, was the huge number of missiles that made it past the Iron Dome defense system. Folks, this raises so many questions. Where's this going from here? What's next? What about Hezbollah? What about activity in the north, Lebanon, even Syria for that matter? What about retaliation towards the obvious villain? There's actually a couple of them, Iran and Russia. But what about retaliation, at least towards Iran, who certainly had the biggest hand in all this, so there were actually many. So many questions, not a whole lot of answers, but I know who to turn to when these kinds of issues arise. And you hear Amir Tsarfati, you hear him many places. Most of you have been to one of his meetings and conferences, churches, etc., or hear him online. Amir, welcome back to the program at such a dreadful time, but I'm so glad you could join me.
Yes, thank you, Jan. It's always good to be here with you.
Apprise my listeners how your family is. They're in northern Israel. They're near Tiberias. Tell me what's going on and how they're handling this.
We live in the Jezreel Valley right next to an air base, so we are experiencing this conflict and this war in a very loud way. The F-16s that are taking off and landing non-stop ever since Saturday afternoon. To tell you that we're in good spirit, no, especially my little boy, a 10-year-old. It's very anxious, and this is his first war. I mean, we've had military operations before, but nothing ever can be close even to what Israel has experienced right now. And the sheer amount of atrocities that we hear about and we see on television, this is something that our kids should not be seeing and hearing. And so, yeah, that's my biggest concern. My family, other than that, is okay. And I'm glad that within a few hours, I'll be on my way to get there.
I'm reflecting back, actually a number of decades, on October 6th, 1973. The unthinkable happened at that time, and on the watch of Prime Minister Gogue-Magogue, Israel's enemies gathered on her borders and planned to wipe out the very memory of her existence, Psalm 83. And they nearly succeeded. And at that time, Amir, Mayer appealed to President Richard Nixon, no friend of the Jews, to be honest, but his mother had told him when he was young that if you can ever help Israel in a time of desperate need, she said, do it. He had advisors in Washington in the early 70s, one of them, Henry Kissinger, not real fond of the idea of Nixon and America helping Israel in the 73 Yom Kippur War, and he did it anyway to remember what his mother told him. And he and the Lord worked together and actually saved the country back in 1973. Amir, there are so many parallels. Talk to us a little bit about some of those parallels.
First of all, by the way, we're talking about a day apart from the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur. I mean, we're talking about exactly 50 years later, and the Israeli intelligence is once again experiencing one of its darkest moments of not understanding, not knowing that for the last year, Hamas has been planning the most murderous, barbaric attack on Jewish people ever since the Holocaust, basically. And it's a colossal failure. It's a failure to understand that they are not even using the communication system that we thought they have. It's a failure to understand that all of the demonstrations they had by the fence were actually just an opportunity to collect information on cameras and on sensors and all of that. It's a colossal failure because we did not even know that they have bomb-dropping drones. We thought that incendiary balloons is what they have. We underestimated them. We truly did. And again, in such a tense period, we did not keep enough soldiers in our military outposts. It was like we were in a high. We're winning, we're doing great, we're invincible, and that's it. And we woke up to understand that we may have overestimated ourselves and definitely underestimated our enemies, because what they did worked better than they thought. The outcome was better than they thought. In fact, one of the terrorists that we captured alive and we interrogated, he said that they were shocked that no one was waiting for them on the other side of the fence. They did not think in their greatest dreams, they did not think that it'll be that easy. They managed to breach in 15 different points along the fence, to breach that fence and allow themselves to have free access in and out of the Gaza Strip. And they were so amazed that there is nothing there that is stopping them, that they started going back and forth into Israel and back with as many people as they could. It was like unbelievable. Vehicles and motorcycles will go into Israel, abduct people and bring them in, then go back to abduct some more. It was unbelievable, colossal failure that will be investigated in an investigation committee that will definitely have to start after the end of all of this. But the Israelis, although they're very, very disturbed by this whole thing, they know that this is not the time to find people that we want to blame for this. It's time to stick together, stand up, and fight back.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we're doing right now.
I'm concerned because Bibi Netanyahu already is not the most popular prime minister, which most Christians love Bibi. He's been the longest serving, interrupted a few times, but still the longest serving. He's a military hero. Is the blame going to be put on him? Is it the intelligence community? Is it the military? Is it the politicians? Or all of them, maybe?
First of all, I would say that also most of the Israelis like him. That's why he's the prime minister. We're a democracy and people voted for him. So it's not just most Christians, most Israelis. However, I will say that what happened in the last few days is a clear, colossal failure of the liberal left approach that we must do peace with the Hamas, that we must negotiate with Hamas, that we must appease the Palestinians. I think that if there was maybe 30% or 20% of the Israelis that thought that way, today they may be 2%. So the Israelis as a nation, I think, moved way right now. But will Netanyahu personally be elected again or would want to be the prime minister again? I'm not sure. I think that it's probably his last term and probably right after this, hopefully we will win. But I don't see him staying as a prime minister because it's obviously when the time comes and people will have to give some explanations, we will probably expect everyone in the government and in the military, all the top leaders, we expect them to step down.
Amir, some are saying that Israel has been changed forever. What do they mean by that? Because how would Israel be changed forever? Humiliated? I mean, nobody wants that. So what do they mean when we hope that it's setting a stage for a spiritual turnaround, though that doesn't really happen until Daniel's 70th week, the tribulation?
First of all, I do believe that there is a little bit of a spiritual awakening. I'm going to give you one thing that will show you how changed we are right now. How changed we are from 5 days ago. Israel's mode of operation right now in Gaza is as if we do not have any kidnapped people in Gaza, which means we go all the way. That's something that would never be in the Israel of 5 days ago. In 5 days ago, we would be worried. 5 days ago, just for one soldier, we gave them, if you remember, for one soldier, we released 1,000 terrorists. if you remember Gilad Shalit.
Of course.
Well, for one kidnapped soldier, the whole country was worried and counting the days. And then we released 1,000 terrorists. By the way, you know who the leader of Hamas is today? Yahya Sinwar, who was one of those terrorists who were released in exchange for Gilad Shalit. Now, just so you understand, the Israelis are at the level now that they're saying, you know what? We have to put an end to this, and we will not let them use any abducted people as neither human shields nor as ace to get anything in return. Nothing. Israel already turned down every possible offer for an exchange of prisoners. We're saying, no, it's not going to happen. You will either release them all right now, or you will completely be annihilated. That's it. And they're very angry because the whole point of the abduction was that they get something out of it. And we just pulled that carpet from underneath them. We're just saying, we're telling them, that's a different Israel from 5 days ago.
Okay. So we're all concerned about a wider war, and that can mean lots of things. It certainly can mean more terrorist groups from the north, Hezbollah, Lebanon, for that matter, parts of Syria. There's unlimited terrorists within Syria. Without a doubt, you feel Russia was very involved in this, which is shades here of Gogue-Magogue on the horizon. That's not now, but it's up ahead sometime. So where do you see this going as far as a wider war is concerned? We're very, very concerned about that.
Let me tell you this. The game changer is when the U.S. president ordered Gerald Ford carrier to come to Israel. This is the most advanced and the biggest and the strongest U.S. carrier with a strike group, as well as B-52s. Let me remind you, America did not send Ukraine B-52s. America did not send the Gerald Ford to the Ukraine. America did not assist the Ukraine in even half of the way you guys are doing right now. Yes, you're sending a lot of weapons and money, but let's face it, it's one thing to send money that you'll never know where it went, and it's another thing to put the most massive carrier in the world on the coast of Israel with a show of force that is definitely changing the game. So the game changer is that Israel is not standing alone here, and the international community is united now on our side, which gives us the legitimacy to do far more things than we could do if we were restrained by all of these political powers. And so, unlike the Ezekiel War, where we will not be assisted by anyone, and we will be all by ourselves, and God will win for us, of course. And again, another thing that we have to take in consideration is this. No country is willing to participate in this war. It is only terrorist organizations. It is only what I call the proxies of the Iranians, the proxies of the Iranians in Syria, in Lebanon, and the proxies in maybe Yemen or Iraq. But it's not the Iraqi army. It's not the Syrian army. It's not the Lebanese army. It's not the Jordanian army. Certainly not the Egyptian army. Those countries are not participating. This is a big difference. Israel is fighting, in a way, only Iran, because these are all proxies of Iran. We're not fighting Lebanon. We're fighting Hezbollah. If you ask the Lebanese, not a single Lebanese would want to fight with Israel right now.
You feel Russia is involved, and I would concur with that Russia is involved. Some of the sophistication is beyond Iran, all right? It can only come from one other source, and that's Russia.
Only a state power can provide the Palestinians the knowledge, the equipment, and the training that we see from this operation. Bomb-dropping drones are not something... Yeah, these are some things that the Russians are using in Ukraine throughout the entire war. We've seen that. I have hundreds of videos of footage from those drones when they drop bombs and they hit Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian trenches, and Ukrainian armored vehicles. That I know it's a Russian thing. The Iranians don't make those. The Iranians are making suicide drones or drones that are capable of flying very long with missiles and rockets, not a tiny bomb that you just drop like that. That's a Russian thing. Also, for the longest time, Israel is suffering from disturbances in our GPS around our airport because of the Russians. And it's a very likely thing that the Russians helped in disturbing the frequencies of the Iron Dome radar system, which might explain why so many of the rockets this time fell on civilian populated areas. And of course, the communication system is also something that we have never seen before that they're using right now. Look, there's no doubt it's been a year. There are words in the intelligence community now that the Wagner group trained them. And so the Russians don't care about allies or friends. They don't even have any regards to their human life of their own people. Look how many soldiers they're sending to the battlefield to die like crazy. So I see the fingerprints of Russia. I saw it from the get-go of this thing. This was something that I even mentioned in my newsletter that I sent. And now the Russians are showing their true face when they said that if America is going to fight on Israel's side, they are going to be on the Palestinian side. So that tells you a lot about who they support and who they are standing with.
If you just joined me, you're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. This is Jan Markell. I have on the line Amir Tsarfati. He is heading back to Israel after an extensive tour. And let me just mention a few things about Amir here. Find more information at beholdisrael.org, beholdisrael.org. He does have a new book out. It is a fiction book titled Out of the Far North, and it talks about some of the things we're talking about this hour. My ministry is carrying it. You can find it in my store, olivetreeviews.org. If you go there, it's not there. It will be there by probably Monday of next week, so just be patient, okay? We got a lot of products, and we're trying to keep the stock high, so you can check now, but I would say that for sure by Monday of next week, we'll have Out of the Far North. And again, sign up for his messages on Telegram, and that's where I keep apprised of a lot of things. Behold Israel, Amir Tsarfati on Telegram. You can find Olive Tree on Telegram as well. You can find us on all the social media platforms, and we've just added Truth Social as well. So check them out, but I can't strongly encourage enough to follow Amir on Telegram. Let me just give a quick heads up that we had our bi-monthly Understanding the Times one-night event back on October the 5th with special guest Pastor Barry Stagner. Co-hosts were Pastor Mark Henry and yours truly, and you can watch that 2-hour event that included a message, a roundtable discussion of current event happenings, and a short Q&A at my website, olivetreeviews.org. And then go to video, olivetreeviews.org, and then go to video. You can get a DVD of the event for just $10 in my online store, or by calling us. You can watch these live streamed events through the Olive Tree app, the Mark Henry Ministries app, and you can watch them as they happen at markhenryministries.com. You can watch them post-program at the various places, including my website. Very, very interesting evening because folks, so much is going on that I think has biblical relevance, and that's what we try to cover, not only on this program, but on the every other month events that we hold at Mark Henry's church here in the suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, Amir, let me just quickly direct your thoughts, because you made reference here to our present administration, and I'm so glad you did, but initially when this broke on October the 7th, now several days ago, the administration came out in a tweet and said, Israel, don't retaliate, run into a corner and hide and don't retaliate. And now, just a few days later, they're sending in a very impressive fleet, as you've just outlined, which is to scare any opposing element to come against Israel. Same thing happened in 1973, folks. Exact same thing. Richard Nixon called on our military to interrupt Russia, who was on the move in 1973, to intervene and interfere in the Yom Kippur War and, quite frankly, obliterate Israel, which could have happened. And Richard Nixon sent the military, and everyone turned around, and pretty soon it did wind down after about 3 weeks. So, Amir, there are parallels. Again, the military being sent once again, and it being an effective warning.
Exactly. Trust me, I don't think that if America thought that it's just a bunch of terrorists, they would have sent a carrier. Let's face it, they understand that there are bigger forces than just Hamas here that are involved, and that is why the carrier is almost on our shores. And by the way, the first country that was coming against it is Russia. And then you heard from Iran, and then you heard from Yemen, and then you heard from even China is not in love with America's role here. But this is beyond a group of barbaric terrorists. This is way beyond it.
I'm just going to throw in a CBN clip here because the communicator paints such a picture. And folks, if you want to watch the video version of our radio program, and it may not be quite up to snuff this time, and that's only because we're rushing our program to make deadlines and to be able to feature. We're so honored to have Amir on our program today to make sense of the senseless. I'm just going to play a short clip here. CBN talking about what's going on. If you want to watch the video version, we throw these clips in, and you can graphically see here. They cover it appropriately and very, I think, in taste.
As many as 800 Israelis have been murdered, maybe up to 3,000 have been injured, and about 100 have been kidnapped into Gaza. Israel is reeling right now. Here's the latest. Take a look.
48 hours after Hamas's invasion on October 7th, the IDF says it has regained control of all the towns on the Gaza border, while Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. Following the invasion, the numbers are staggering. More than 4,000 rockets fired into Israel, as many as 800 Israelis murdered, almost 3,000 injured, many seriously, and up to 100 kidnapped and taken into captivity in Gaza. The images horrifying. Armed terrorists roaming Israeli communities at will and murdering anyone in sight. Elderly women and men dead on the street. Whole families inside their homes slaughtered, with more than 200 killed at an outdoor dance festival. The atrocities reminiscent of ISIS. Bodies of the dead being desecrated in the streets of Gaza. A captured 85-year-old grandmother with dementia being mocked in this photo. This 7-year-old boy being tormented by young Gazan boys with a whip. A 1-year-old being toyed with by this Hamas terrorist. And this Israeli woman named Noah kidnapped at a concert. Her fiancé dragged along, and her father in anguish. Israel is now on a war footing, with up to 300,000 reservists called up to action. Many anticipate a ground incursion into Gaza soon, with the likely goal the destruction of the Iranian-backed terror group.
Now, for us, it's a time to get organized and to get prepared for the attack against the militia of Hamas. And I call the Prime Minister to take a different approach. We have to eradicate Hamas, period.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting Iran worked directly with Hamas to plot and plan the invasion, while a Hamas spokesman thanked Iran for its support. Major questions do remain. How did this colossal intelligence failure happen? Will Hezbollah enter the war? Regardless of those answers, Israel now finds itself in a new era.
This is a paradigm shift for Israel. The prime minister, the cabinet, the heads of the military, it's clear to everybody that for an attack to be carried out against the Israeli people, we're in a new world, a new region, and our response will be unlimited to what we are going to do to successfully carry out our mission. Whatever that means, all options are on the table.
Well, Amir Tsarfati, he is my guest for the hour. The announcer just said it's a new world. You know, they said that after 9/11, September 11th, 2001, new world. Okay, now he says it's a new world. Well, this is not new. This is Islam. This is certainly fundamentalist Islam. And this should not be a surprise to anybody. The thing that I'm concerned about is the Jewish communities around the world are now on alert. Sydney Jewish community warned to stay home as Hamas supporters claim the city's streets. This is going on in major capitals all over the world as Hamas sympathizers come out in droves. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. But I remember I was in America on 9/11, and when people asked me for my opinion, I said, welcome to the real world. That's what I said, and that's what I'm saying now. It's not a new world, it's the real world. And a lot of people were living in denial so far, even a lot of Israelis, thinking that we can have peace with them, that all we need to do is give them what they want and they'll be okay with us. No, listen, they don't hate me for taking anybody's country. They hate me for being a Jew.
Yeah.
When they entered, they told me for many years that if I get out of Gaza, we'll have peace. Well, we're not in Gaza and we don't have peace. We have war. We have the most murderous, barbaric attack since the Holocaust. And these people, they didn't really think that they're going to overtake the entire country and throw the Jews to the sea and take over. No, they had one thing in mind. Let's go in, kill as many as we can, kidnap some on the way, and get back. And that's it. It's like a monster that needs some blood to drink, and every time it drinks some blood, it is satisfied until it's thirsty again. It has nothing to do with land. It has to do with us being Jews. They didn't kill any soldier there or politician that is responsible for any decisions regarding land or something. They killed babies. They killed mothers and grandmothers. They killed young people dancing in a festival. That's who they killed. And by the way, they had no clue that they're messing with the whole world. They had no clue that they're killing Germans and Americans and French. They had no clue that British and Thai from Thailand, Bangladesh, I mean, so many people were either killed or abducted. And all of that in the name of what? What is it that exactly they want? They actually called the whole operation the Storm of Al-Aqsa, Storm of Al-Aqsa. So if you want to release Al-Aqsa, what does that have to do with killing 260 youngsters who are dancing outside? I mean, it's all using religious language, and it has nothing to do with land. It's about our existence as Jews.
You and I remember the fall of 2005. President George Bush pressured Israel to give up Gaza. It was all part of the geopolitical scenario going on in 2005. For that matter, we can go back to 1993. But just looking at 2005, I remember the video images of Israelis hauling other Israelis out of the Gaza, of shutting down the nurseries there, the places where they're growing flowers, and literally physically dragging Jews away from Gaza so that they could turn this over and let it become a Palestinian enclave. That's America that did that to Israel.
Well, America definitely was captured in that illusion that peace is possible with the Palestinians.
That's
and they kept pushing us more and more. And the conservatives in Israel that were always accused to be, they are racist, they don't like Arab, all of this, they were always accused for not wanting peace. But actually, now we all know that it's the other side that doesn't want peace. And that's exactly what Psalm 120 says, that when I'm for peace, they are for war. That's who we are dealing with. That's who we have around us. You know, when people really want peace, they'll have peace with you. I was watching what the foreign ministry of the United Arab Emirates said following the attack. And that was already when Israel began the operation in Gaza. So we already started bombing there. And yet the Emiratis were unequivocally on our side, saying that they are condemning this barbaric attack. That's a nation that wants peace with Israel. That's it. And it's very sad that U.S. presidents all the way from the get-go were pushing Israel to give up land for what they thought is going to be peace. But it was not peace. It was piece by piece of land that we gave people. The Israelis woke up from that bad dream. What happened to us is that almost 1,200 dead bodies finally convinced us that there is nothing to talk about and no one to talk with. And that's why right now it's the first time that we are giving our military clear directives to completely disarm Hamas and Islamic Jihad. We never did that before. We always thought that we need to leave Gaza standing. We need to leave Hamas to rule. We need to give them discount. We need to allow them. That's it. That carte blanche is gone. From now on, either you live there without any rifle or you don't live.
Folks, just keep in mind that comparing size of Israel versus America, the comparable destruction would be this: 1,000 Israeli deaths equal 30,000 American deaths. Just think, if you're sitting in your easy chair watching the news some of these evenings, very comfortable, of course, and suddenly a blurb comes on that 30,000 Americans have just been killed. Well, that's far, far more than even 9/11. Imagine how that would shake you to the core. Now you can imagine how Israel must feel as they're going through their 9/11. And again, this was civilization versus barbarism, and I think that's what's coming out on the images. And folks, I'm posting articles all day long, every day, about this and other things. You can just go to olivetreeviews.org and go to my headlines. I'm posting articles. I'm posting very blunt videos of what's going on. And you may say, well, Jan, isn't that kind of, can even use the word gross? No, this is reality here in late 2023. This is how our sister nation of Israel is coping right now. some of the barbarism is beyond description. And I just feel you need to see it. I'm not going to air it on things that we're airing currently, but you can go to my website and you can go to any of the Israeli newspapers online, from Times of Israel, Jerusalem Post, Haaretz, a number of them, Israel National News. Half a dozen Israeli outlets are going to be showing you what's really going on, and I suggest you tap into it. Not to be upsetting, but this is reality, as Amir has said. You are listening to Understanding the Times Radio. Jan Markell talking to Amir Tsarfati. Learn more at beholdisrael.org. And again, sign up for his Telegram channel. That is where you will get news well before the cable channels and more. Amir, let me just focus on the Bible here and quiz you a bit. Gog and Magog. People are wondering, is this a precursor? You and I have already said Russia is clearly involved in this conflict. There's sophistication going on, sophistication that defies Iran. They don't have some of the weaponry that's being used. So let's assume that Russia is somehow involved in the background, as they were in 1973, blatantly involved in 73, and they mobilized and Nixon threatened them and they turned around. All right, Gog and Magog. We don't know the timing. Before the rapture, after the rapture. I believe it's probably after the rapture, but again, I don't know that we know for sure, and that we see them burning weapons for 7 years. Talk to us how you might feel Gog-Magog fits in here. That's Ezekiel 38 and 39, folks.
I think that the key to understand that Gog of the land of Magog, that battle can be around the corner, is two things. Is the stepping down of America from being world power and some major power that can assist Israel. That's number one. And number two is the annihilation or the destruction of Damascus, which will obviously contribute to the will to go and invade and destroy Israel.
Isaiah 17.
Isaiah 17,
yeah.
Exactly. I think that as long as Damascus is standing and America is helping Israel, we're not there yet. But again, who said that an implosion in America is not around the corner? And you and I know that Israel or even the rebels in Syria can definitely cause something to happen to Damascus. In fact, in my next thriller, Out of the Far North, that you talked about, that you're selling in your store, I'm addressing that. I'm addressing Russia, I'm addressing the Iranian involvement, but I'm addressing Damascus. And I'm also giving a very realistic scenario of what can bring down this city. But my point is that war definitely is when Israel is alone, and I believe Damascus is gone. And this is a different world. That will be a new world. It is a new world when America is no longer standing, active, viable superpower. That's a new world. And that's a new world when Israel is all on its own. And that's a new world when Russia is... Because people are talking about Russia being defeated in Ukraine. They don't understand. In order for Ezekiel to happen, Russia not only cannot be defeated, but actually it will have a bigger appetite to go after us. And that can only happen if they're still around. So if anything, it's not Russia that is going to step down for Ezekiel to happen. It's America. So I know these are not words that are nice to hear for many Americans, but let's not forget that what you guys are going through right now politically, you might even get to the point where you won't have any elections in November of 24. And the way things are going and the way the illegal immigration is flowing in, and with them, make no mistake, I have very credible sources that I can say that confirm that with those people that are infiltrating into America from the South, there are tons of sleeper terror cells, tons of them. And all it takes is, just like we had it on Saturday, the day that they're being called to do what they've been practicing, planning, and dreaming about.
That's right. I'm glad you said it, Amir. Somebody from the Middle East like you needs to say it. The left will never listen, but there are plenty who are listening and who are trying to wake people up that can make these decisions to secure borders, etc. I think it has to be done in an election. Once the left is in power, they just aren't going to give up the border.
I think election years are normally the time for a lot more tension and violence and a lot more power hunger. I definitely see that 2024 will be very, very critical year. And that's one of the reasons God put on my heart to stay in Israel and build our center, connect and work from there. And because even in our region, everything that happens to America not indirectly, but directly affects Israel.
Yes. Another thing that affects Israel, and I'm going down a different path right now, Amir Tsarfati. He is my guest. Learn more at beholdisrael.org. Sign up to be on his Telegram, please, and check out his latest book in my store. If it's not there as you're listening, olivetreeviews.org, and go to the online store. It'll be there by hopefully Monday. And we have many of Amir's products in my store. This hour is not to be promoting the selling of things. It's to keep you folks apprised and informed. But Amir, I'm going down a little bit different road here. It will be no surprise to you because many denominations and churches right now cannot comprehend all that's going on. I've heard from people already early in this new week. Their church said nothing about this on Sunday. Nothing. Not even a prayer appeal. And we have people listening who are part of different denominations who might be stressing amillennialism, post-millennialism, kingdom now, reform theology, replacement theology. And not everybody, let's just say within reform theology, would be not pro-Israel. There certainly are some who are, but I am going to play a clip, and it is from Ligonier Ministries. That happens to be R.C. Sproul's organization. It's two theologians. Their names are Derek Thomas and Stephen Nichols, and I hope it opens your eyes to what some out there are believing and thinking, and therefore what's going on now, other than it's a real bloody scenario, beyond that, they don't take it to heart like Amir and I do.
Reformed theology has differed as to whether there is a future for ethnic Israel. Calvin seems to be on the side that there is not, that Israel is the church is Israel. There's no special prophecy for a worldwide conversion of Jews. But then you and I, we were talking at lunch about John Murray, and John Murray, in his commentary on Romans 11:26, and all Israel shall be saved, saw that in terms of a future conversion on a large scale of ethnic Jews. I don't think Murray had any ideas that involved the nation of Israel or Palestine or the significance of 1948 and so on. But certainly you and I in England with Mission to the Jews, that 19th century Robert Murray McCheyne founded, very much on the point of view that all Israel shall be saved was a reference to ethnic Jews.
This is a serious issue, dispensationalism and non-dispensationalism or covenant theology. There's three issues. We've talked about one, it's eschatology and the eschatological time frame. The other is this two peoples of God. And it ends up being two ways of salvation. It ends up being this bifurcation of the testaments. So that sharp distinction between Israel and the church rather than an understanding of one person of God, or the one people of God, rather. The third issue is just reading the Bible. And here's fundamentally the problem with dispensationalism. There are the parts that matter are the epistles. And the parts that we sort of pick and choose from are the Gospels in the Old Testament. And so that's, I think, the real Achilles heel here. We can get hung up on the eschatological calendars and the differences, but I think what we need to see is this is not a healthy way. A dispensational theology and a dispensational hermeneutic is not a healthy way to read the Bible.
Folks, if you're in that kind of a church, you're not going to be able to make sense of our times. That's all I'm telling you. Amir, you want to comment, please?
Unfortunately, this is exactly what I was talking about in awaiting his return in Philadelphia. It's heartbreaking because I think that this is an insult for God and for his character. You cannot suggest that God has replaced Israel with the church. I believe that if you say that, you're actually calling so many prophets liars. Prophets that describes the return of the Jews at the end to their God. You call the Apostle Paul a liar. I mean, it's a very sick way of interpreting the Bible because then you're discrediting big portions of it. I always like to emphasize the word until. because until means that there is something coming. And I believe with all of my heart that when Jesus said to Jerusalem, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, that means that they are going to say, that they are going to invite him. God is not done with Israel. Paul was actually quite angry that this is something that some Christian Gentiles can insinuate. That's why he wrote the 11th chapter of the book of Romans. And the problem also is that the church loves to take all the good things that were promised to Israel, but not all the bad things that were said about to the Jew first. Everybody loves to quote Romans 1 about the fact that the salvation is to the Jew first, but no one quotes Romans 2 that talks about all the bad things that will come upon those that are not with God. And then it says to the Jew first and to the Greek. My point is that it's a sick theology, and it's a theology that was fueled by a lot of anti-Semitism from day one. And unfortunately, the Reformed theology is based a lot on John Calvin. I hate to tell you, but he was the hero. And Martin Luther, they were the heroes of Adolf Hitler.
We've talked about that on this program a number of times.
Exactly.
And Amir,
Yeah.
we have good people. We have steady listeners to this program and followers of your ministry and followers of your YouTube channel. By the way, sign up for it, folks. It's the very best in keeping you up to speed on what's going on all over the world. But a lot of people who follow you and follow me find themselves in these churches. You and I are both left with trying to encourage them, and many of them don't want to leave those churches. They have lifelong friends there, etc. And it's a tough call. I don't know what to tell them. But they're not hearing a kind of analysis of what's going on in the world, as those two gentlemen just basically said. Stay away from dispensationalism, which teaches the left-behind theology. And what Amir and I are teaching very regularly, there's a literal Israel, Antichrist, rapture, second coming, tribulation, time of Jacob's trouble. They would say nonsense to all of that, and there are exceptions. John MacArthur has actually scolded some of these folks, and I've seen him do that, and I do give him credit for doing that. Amir, let me just ask you a couple of questions here as our time is winding down. What is God doing in Israel, and particularly as we speak? Now, some are saying, well, don't you know, Jan and Amir, he's bringing Israel to their knees. Well, I'm not sure quite what that means, but we know he's working in their hearts. You and I know that, and we see that on a regular basis. And we know that God is going to work good out of the evil that has just landed on their doorstep, literally, as they went to answer the door and found 10 Hamas terrorists staring at them and mowing them down. But I go back to my question, what is God doing in the hearts of the Israelis by allowing, not sending, by allowing this to happen?
I think that all that the world has been promising them regarding their future, regarding peace and safety and all of that, they can see that it is a big deception. And a lot of them are looking for meaning, looking for other ways, looking for, okay, so what are we doing here? I also think that we've gone so far in our postmodernism and what I call also post-Zionism, to the point that those liberal left protesters denied the right of Israel to be first Jewish and then democratic. They sanctified democracy on the expense of the Jewish nature of the land. And I think that they received a wake-up call, because when those terrorists came, they didn't ask them, are you a democratic or not? Are you supporting democracy or not? All they cared was that they are Jews. All they cared is that they are citizens of this country that is the land of the Jewish people. And that's why they were killed. And so we need to remind ourselves that this is the only country that is considered a Jewish and democratic. And we cannot forget that. Jews cannot forget their heritage. They cannot forget who they are. And they cannot forget that it's all completely, tightly connected to the book of books, to the Bible. When Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence, he actually read it and he said that Israel will be established according to the vision of the prophets of Israel. He connected our very existence and the establishment of the country to fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Bible prophecy is something that was in the mind, the heart, and in the body of those who wrote the Declaration of Independence of Israel. And that is why those people that hate dispensationalism, they have a problem. Israel was born on May 14, 1948. They did not plan that. As long as the Jews were gone, it was easy to play with that very dangerous theology because, yes, God forgot about them. Yes, they are all over. They're defeated. They're annihilated. Well, no, we're back in the land. Miraculously, we're back in the land. And we're one of the most advanced countries on planet Earth right now. And so that is a big problem for a lot of those people. I think that I see more and more openness among the Israelis. The problem is that the first thing they do is they turn to Orthodox Judaism.
Yeah.
Or they turn to some other spiritual answers. And it's another reason why I think that I want to put together that center in Israel where I can teach also the locals and I can be of some help to bring the message to my own people.
Tell my audience what that is. Some of them aren't on your various channels, YouTube and Telegram. So tell them what it is. And I'm running perilously short on time. Take at least 2 minutes to do that.
We're building a center in the Jezreel Valley overlooking the Valley of Armageddon, of a place where I can host people to teach them and also have a studio to broadcast to the whole world. And the idea is to connect people all around the world to what's going on in Israel, connect current events with what's going on in Israel and the Bible, and connects the Israelis with Bible prophecy. Most churches in Israel don't teach Bible prophecy. And I also want to have a place where I can teach any Israeli that wants to study about the Messiah. We're going to have a library there of my books that will be translated to Hebrew also. And I will give seminars on the book of Revelation, other books, the Bible. And yeah, we want to connect with the Israelis. We want to connect with the Jewish people. We want to connect them to the Bible, everyone to Israel. That's why we chose the word connect. It's connecting so many things. And that's what I will do. And that's where I will spend my time throughout 2024. I'm not going to be traveling.
I know you're not.
I'm taking a sabbatical. And I know that some big things are going to happen. Otherwise, God wouldn't be pressing on me to stay and be with the family and report and teach from Israel.
How can they support this financially?
On our website, beholdisrael.org, there's an option to donate. And one of the questions is, where do you want to donate? There is BI Connect. They can actually just press there, and whatever they donate will go to that project.
Okay. Beholdisrael.org and look for the Connect. And that's the project that Amir just described to you. And again, the latest book, Out of the Far North, will be in my online store, hopefully by the weekend, for sure by Monday. Again, that's fiction, just so you folks know, it's fiction. Some folks are more interested in the novels, but this is an exception because it's talking about some of the things going on right now. Amir, let's look at one verse before we close, and that is the verse out of Romans, all Israel will be saved. And had we another 15 minutes here, I'd have you give your testimony, and you've given it at my conference, you've given it all over the world. And Amir has been at, I think, 5 of my events since 2015. But the verse out of Romans 11, that all Israel will be saved, and that doesn't mean every Jew on the planet, sadly, but those who are going to survive the time of Jacob's trouble, the tribulation, are going to look upon him whom they pierced and mourn and say, oh my, that is the Lord Jesus we rejected. We are not rejecting him any longer.
Absolutely. And that's when Israel will have national salvation, which is the only nation on planet Earth that is promised national salvation. But remember that it tells you further down that same chapter that concerning the gospel, right now they're your enemies, but concerning the election, they are beloved for the sake of the Father. So even now, when they are not really believing and they are kind of the enemies of the gospel, they don't want Christianity, they're still enjoying the status of the chosen people. They are chosen for the sake of their beloved, for the sake of their fathers. For God does not change his mind about his elections and about choices. That's who God is. And that's the problem. The church is insecure many times with the choices of God. And we need to understand that God has used Israel for a reason, and he will use Israel for a season. And the only time Israel will no longer exist as a nation is when the New Jerusalem will come down from heaven, and there will be no more sun, no more moon, no more stars, which is exactly what Jeremiah 31 says. Only when those things will not be there then Israel will no longer stand before me. Because in the New Jerusalem, it's not about Jews or Gentiles. It's about all that are having their name written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So Israel will enjoy an interesting status all the way even through the millennial kingdom. And that's why Jerusalem will be the main city. That's where Jesus will reign from Jerusalem. There will be a temple in the millennial kingdom. There's still significance to the establishment of Israel in Jerusalem as the center. And the kingdom of Christ will be from that city. So I don't understand why Christians have a problem with that when it's so clear that that's the heart of God and the plan of God.
Amir, thank you for all you do, and we're certainly going to be praying for you, your family. My audience is praying continually for Israel in this terrible, terrible, heartbreaking situation that has been graphically brought to us by some of the more honest media that's willing to share some of these images. I want to go out of the program here quoting what Amir wrote just a couple of days ago. He wrote these words, and I think they're so appropriate. He writes, "Pray for Israel. Pray for the families who have lost loved ones. Pray for the captives and the wounded. They will all have incredible trauma that they will have to process through the months and years to come. Pray for wisdom for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government as they mete out their response against Hamas and evaluate the steps to ensure this never happens again." And it says, most of all, pray that God is glorified somehow through all of this. Indeed, let's pray that somehow this makes a permanent impression on the hearts of many Jewish people. See how God's going to work through it all and some of the miracles that have already happened in just a few days. I want to thank you for listening, folks. We will talk to you again next week.
Jesus, Redeemer, mighty to save.
Contact us through our website, olivetreeviews.org. That's olivetreeviews.org. Call us Central Time at 763-559-4444. That's 763-559-4444. We get our mail when you write to Olive Tree Ministries in Jan Markell, Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311. That's Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311. All gifts are tax deductible. The psalmist says that he that keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The same God looks over you today as well. God is always in control. His eye is on the sparrow, but you are engraved on the palm of his hand. And just know that all things happen so that everything can fall into place.